Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this fourth video lesson about supply and demand. I am Miss Jennifer Blank, and today we're going to be talking about movements versus shifts of the demand curve. So we've already talked about understanding demand, what demand is, and what the law of demand is, and various other key ideas. We've also talked about elasticity of demand, and today we're going to look at shifts of the demand curve and why it does that. But first, we need to review a couple of things just to make sure we're all on the same page. So demand curve is literally a graphical representation of a demand schedule. And what is this? Well, it's the relationship between the quantity demanded of that good or service and the price of that good or service. It's the relationship between those two things. Now, a demand schedule is a table showing how much of a good or service consumers will want to buy at different prices. So if you have an increase in prices, the quantity demanded falls. If you have a decrease in prices, then the quantity demanded rises. This is otherwise known as the law of demand. So why do we care? Well, presumably we would like to understand how and why the economy functions. And in order to do that, we need to understand how and why there are shifts of the demand curve and how and why there are movements along the demand curve. I'm telling you, once you understand the supply and demand model, the rest of the world is going to make so much more sense. You're going to be like, oh, OMG. You're going to be very surprised at how well you understand the world now. That may depress you, but you will be very knowledgeable about how the world works. So, why do we care? Well, we have a shift of versus movement along, okay? A shift happens when the entire line on the graph moves to the right or to the left. Movement happens when we move from one point on the line to another point on that same line. So, shift, the entire line moves. Movement is when you go from one point to another. Okay, so this is a visual for you. So this is a shift of the demand curve. You can see if you start here, this is the original demand. This represents a decrease. And whenever you're drawing this, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure to draw the arrows. Those are important, especially on the AP exam. So this represents a decrease in demand. We started out here, we moved in. All right, that shows a decrease. Then if you look over here on the right, this is an increase in demand. You have the original demand line here, and then we shifted outward. That's the new demand. That reflects an increase. Okay, as you can see, the quantity, it moves from one place to a lower number. Here, it would move from a lower number to a higher number. All right, increase versus decrease. A movement is when the equilibrium changes. That nice little E, remember we talked about that in the introduction, that E, the equilibrium E1, when that moves, that E1 then becomes E2, you have a movement. Okay, you move from point A to point B. All right, that's a movement. All right, so a change in demand and the law of demand. First of all, this shows the increase in the quantity demanded at any given price. This results in a shift of the demand curve. Okay, the law of demand says that the higher a price is for a good or service, all things equal, this will cause a decrease in demand. Increase in price, decrease in demand. Increase in price, decrease in demand, and vice versa. Okay, this is very important. Movements versus shifts. Okay, like I said, with a shift, the entire curve moves left or right. A left equals a decrease, a right equals an increase. Okay, now movements, you move from one point in the curve to another. The demanded quantity changes due to a change in price. Okay, so it's not that overall consumer demand is changing. People still want, per se, the good as much as they always did, or don't want as much as they always did. But they just want less if the price increases, or they want a little bit more of it if the price decreases. Okay, so this is a change in the amount that is demanded, not in the overall demand for a good. So let's look at an example. Now, full disclosure, I did not make the slide, but I found it from a very, very good teacher who obviously has time and the knowledge base to do this, so I'm going to share this slide with you. So movement along versus shift. So movement along the demand curve is a change in the quantity demanded of a good and is the direct result of a change in that good's price. I want you to think about, remember to the determinants of demand, determinants are what cause a demand curve to shift. And the P in point is price of other goods. That's what causes a shift, not the price of the actual good. When you have a change in the price of the actual good, it's a movement. All right, so we see, this is the start of our graph. We've moved from A to B, that is a movement. From point A to B is an increase in quantity demanded. This reflects a movement along the demand curve. It is a result of the fall in the price of a good. You see, we started at $350 and people wanted $2,500. Then we go to $215 and all of a sudden people want double that. They want $5,000 because the price dropped. Okay, there's a change in the quantity demanded. Now, let's say we move to point C. All right. From point A to point C is an increase in the quantity demanded, reflects a shift of the demand curve. It is a result of an increase in the quantity demanded at any given price. So when you move from A to C, it means that people's demand generally has just increased. Doesn't matter about the price. They just want more of that thing. Okay? Versus A to B, where people only want more of it if the price drops. If we move from A to C, it means they want more, period. Kind of like if you're looking at your sports team, let's say the Florida Marlins, right? And the loyal Marlins fans, you know, that they'll hang out, but demand is pretty steady for that, right? So if the Marlins drop the price and all things being equal, nothing else is changing, their record is still relatively the same, they're all playing pretty much the same, you know, then if they drop the price, more people will want tickets. But the big picture demand is not going to be there. Now, let's say the Marlins make it to the playoffs and they're playing in the World Series. That demand curve is going to be like in the next room. Okay, people are all of a sudden really going to want the tickets regardless of price. They want to go to the World Series. Okay, I hope that helps it make a little bit more sense. So a shift of the demand curve is from A to C, and a movement of the demand curve is from A to B, and it's not the same thing. Two different things, ladies and gents. So let's review the determinants of demand. Okay, points. Price of other goods. That's what shifts it. Not the price of the actual good you're examining. It's the price of other goods, either substitutes or complementaries. All right. The outlook, consumer expectation of future income and prices. And income, normal goods versus inferior goods. If your income goes up, you're going to get the normal good. If your income goes down, you're going to go for inferior goods. The number of potential consumers, that's the population of the market, and consumers' tastes, the fads or fashions that are in or out at any given point. So, 5 determinants of demand. Let's really take a closer look at this. Now that we've kind of talked about these topics, let's get into a bit more detail. We've introduced them. Changes in price of related goods or services. Substitutes are goods and services that are replacements. Complements are goods and services that are consumed with another good or service. So, tea and coffee are substitutes. Coffee and cream are complements. Okay? Changes in income. Normal goods, demand increases when income rises. So people are going to go with Kellogg's Corn Flakes because it's a normal good. It's the brand name. People want that. But if their income goes down, they're going to go for the inferior good. They're going to go for the store brand, the Publix Corn Flakes, for example. Changes in taste. This is completely based on consumer preference and sadly is completely economically unpredictable. All right, we're a crazy bunch, humanity, and we like things like Kim Kardashian, and that just defies all logic and rationale and reason. The Enlightenment thinkers would be rolling over in their graves, but it's economically unpredictable. Lord only knows why on earth Kim Kardashian is so popular. Brilliant businesswoman, but I don't understand, but that's a video lesson for another day. Changes in expectations, potential increases or decreases in prices, and potential changes to income, and the changes in the number of consumers. This can increase or decrease based on the population, and there are individual demand curves as well. Those show the relationship between quantity demanded and the price for one person. Now it's time for some practice. Pause the video, take out a pencil, and some graph paper. Okay, you are given the following information about demand in the competitive market for bicycles. All right, and you see this table. All right, this is a market demand schedule. Okay, market demand schedule. So now I would like you to graph this demand schedule, placing price on the vertical axis and quantity on the horizontal axis. You should pause the video, do this, and then start it up again, and I'll have the answer for you in just a second. Just pause the video. Don't look ahead. Don't cheat. Do it. All right, here's hoping you didn't cheat. So, okay, here we go. This is what your demand curve should look like, just to give you some graphing practice. I hope this made sense to you. I hope you understand. And this is the end of part 4. So I'm going to see y'all in part 5. Have a good one.